what we will be discussing is security startups and how to grow a brand. But like all the other podcasts, Bob, are you okay just to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, if that's okay?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here. So Bob Brinklow. My career actually started out in retail many moons ago. It feels like now, and that career path naturally extended to distance selling. Way back in the day, that was really through printed media, so
Yeah.
yellow pages and glossy magazines and things like that. But as the internet evolved in 99, 2000, really we got to grips with that pretty quickly. And in fact, this online business in the year 2000 grew very quickly to revenues of 15 million by 2004. So I had a very, very early intro into e-commerce and digital marketing, which looks very different now, I must say. But and then from there, I kept my role kept within growth and marketing
Yep.
through lots of different sectors. So online fashion, grocery, mobile tech, and mobile accessories. Um, my most recent role before joining Nord Security was CMO for a luxury brand. So, I've had a sort of very diverse intro and experience into growing B2C businesses in different sectors at different stages in their journeys. So, startups to 100 mil turnover businesses, and each of the roles really have had different challenges. I think way back to sort of 2011, I was working with a Danish entrepreneur trying to grow an online furniture business called Voga into Europe, and that had its own set of challenges because we didn't have localized content, we didn't have translators, we didn't really know how we were going to exploit those markets. And again, very much a learning curve. And then so coming up to approaching 3 years in March next year, I've been at Nord Security. A very different change for me in terms of career path. It's my first real experience, hands-on experience with a SaaS company, but very exciting. The growth and I guess overall, what objective is to do the same thing, is to grow the consumer base as fast as we can.
Yeah, okay. So obviously your role at Nord then is to be the UK country manager. Now, yeah, I'm just going to ask you sort of plainly, like what does a country manager do then, Bob?
Yeah, I think we wear a lot of hats actually, and I think it can be very different according to the stage of growth. So, for example, a more mature market like the UK or the US, the objective might be very much to maintain good growth. So the focus probably is more around the opportunities in growth. And I think in this role, I've seen affiliate marketing's become very distinct. And I think partnerships form part of that, and it's become very sort of consumer centric. A lot of trust involved, a lot of synergies between two brands. So sort of B2B2C partnerships is been one of my core focuses. But prior to that, my early sort of months within the role was much broader. You sort of as a country manager, you're involved with research, you're involved with very cross-functional marketing. So it's sort of exposure into other performance channels like podcasts, actually, where I hadn't come across podcast marketing before, and I've been quite surprised by the performance, because not only do you get immediate performance impact and uplift, you get a long tail benefit from a podcast. It has a long shelf life, and so measuring sort of performance metrics takes longer because sticks around
Yeah.
much more.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And so obviously it's a big importance on growth, like you say. So have you found the security world to be much different in terms of growing the brand, or is the nuances the same? It's just speaking to different people, or is there anything specific about the world of security that you didn't think about before joining?
Yeah, I think it's certainly been an eye opener for me, an enjoyable journey because by my own admission, I didn't really know too much about, the dangers of surfing the web and, the kind of things that, you are exposed to. And I think,
Mm,
cybersecurity as a whole, providing solutions for technologies and data and networks and cyber attacks, for the consumer, I still feel now, even after 2.5 years, that there's a lot more we need to do to educate the mainstream.
mm,
We had, I think, for the UK market, I talk for that specifically. I would say a specific cohort that we would market for, and I think we're starting to see a bit of a shift in terms of demographic shift.
yeah,
Um, more female, perhaps, cohorts, Gen Zs becoming more aware that they need to feel confident
yeah.
online. Um, yeah, does that answer that question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's just got me thinking about how do you actually measure sort of your own success in growing a brand? 'Cause it's not like obviously, or is it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously a CEO pulls up his financials every quarter. Well, I'm sure he does it more often than that, but and it's pretty black and white. A brand, it can be quite subjective. Now, I'm sure that obviously you can go down engagement statistics and this and that, but I don't know. Talk to me about have you got KPIs? How do you measure success?
Yeah, actually, really good question. And I think Nord has built market share by having, from the outset, really very measurable outcomes. So I think in the early days, for every dollar spent, they wanted to get $1.15 back. And I think that metric really hasn't shifted too much. We are quite bottom funnel focused. So, when we think about partnering, for example, with a football club, which we do, um, we will align the rights that way in order that we can, market to an audience that we see is a good fit, but having, links through content that
Yeah,
points to a measurable, um, you know, landing page that has, joint IP, so club logo, Nord logo, building trust, works very well because I think, when we talk about sports partnerships in particular, and in the UK we have, gosh, I think approaching 20
yeah,
sports partnerships. That cohort is very, very, intertwined into the club. They're loyal, they trust the club, they think they think club first, and when a brand joins that club, they trust what the club has done. So I think
yeah,
that helps build trust, and therefore conversion. But measurable is the biggest metric, I think, in performance marketing. And again, if we speak about podcasts or influencers, we embed trackable links into content. And of course, then you've got, other digital marketing and performance marketing channels like, Google Ads and, mobile apps. But everything we do, we want to see performance.
yeah,
If to do nothing else but optimize and learn, because if a football club works, then why shouldn't another?
yeah, yeah.
So,
And I'm being deliberately pedantic here. But what are the advantages of growing a brand? I've been
growing a brand
deliberately
has
pedantic.
lots
Yeah.
of advantages, and I think I look back through my career. I don't think I came across an entrepreneur, CEO, or board that's run by private equity that doesn't want growth. Growth builds equity and value,
Yeah.
and you've got to be doing that for the right reasons. And I think Nord Security, as a brand, wants to build a radically better internet. Right.
Mm.
That first and foremost, it's almost how do we build a toolkit for consumers to help their digital confidence, and I think we're doing that. So if we think about AI and biometrics, and the fact that I think our survey recently pointed out that only 1 in 4 Brits are using biometrics.
Yep.
So if they're not using Face ID, they're resting everything on a password that they probably use over and over and over again. So
Yep.
NordVPN's top bundle includes our password manager
Yep.
solution. So NordPass is part of our toolkit,
Yep.
and we build on that, and we keep leveraging these solutions across
Mm.
all of these categories, if you want.
Yeah. And is it difficult for you to kind of be able to, because I'll bring it back into my world for a second. So it's very, very clear that obviously my podcast is for the security community, and my day job is to be a specialist cybersecurity recruiter. It's very, very sort of linear. Now, with yourself, obviously, there's even though Nord Security is all encompassing for security, because of the subsidiary companies that you've got, is it quite hard to be able to sort of market and grow each individual subsection because they've all got slightly different parts to it? Do you know what I say? Nord layer, Nord pass. There's a lack of continuity, or is there? You tell me, because yeah, it's quite unique that.
Yeah, it is, but we work with highly skilled colleagues that
Mm,
understand how to grow businesses at different paces.
mm,
And we've just recently launched an eSIM product called Saily.
yeah,
And again, when we launched it, we leveraged what we're doing with NordVPN, and we offered consumers of NordVPN gigabytes for free of an
right,
eSIM product. But that you will find Saily at Heathrow Airport,
yeah,
very top of funnel. It makes much more sense to invest more dollars at top of funnel for a brand that has no equity or market share
mm,
than it does with a brand like NordVPN that has absolute market share in core markets, where I'm not saying that we should rest on our laurels and assume we're always going to be top of mind, because I am a firm believer that brand equity is everything. You get a lower cost per acquisition if you're top of mind
mm,
than recently we found, for example, we were position 2 on an ad, but our
mm.
click-through rate was better because we're
How
top.
how so?
Because I guess people know the brand more, and even though we were lower down the fold, people
Mm,
clicked on more than us being higher up the fold. So in answer to that, each brand has its own set of challenges, but also equally has its own budgets to reflect that, and approaches. Nord layer is still quite young in terms of where it sits in the marketplace. But again, we will be using a highly skilled team of colleagues that understand how to reach audiences,
yep.
and we certainly won't be doing that through AI. I think
Mm,
building relationships. I was once told by a CEO, and I think he went on and sold a business for multi billions. He said, Bob, there's 3 R's in business: relationships, relationships, relationships. And you can't. We use that I use that mantra daily.
yep.
I think if you build on relationships, you cannot go wrong. You're
Yep.
going in the right direction,
Yep.
and that's what we're doing. But
Yep.
you're right. There are different challenges for each brand, and I think the the approach is different to combat that.
Hmm. So I just want to unpick that a little bit further then. So what are some of the red flags that you look out for in your role? Is it AI? Is AI going to be like a red flag, or is it going to be a green flag for your particular role, or is there other things besides AI?
Yeah, well, I think if you're talking about it from a human perspective in terms of output and their role, we're using AI, all of us, I think, now more and more on a daily basis. It's here. Um, we post on LinkedIn and we have an option to use AI. Do we use it? I prefer it to be written by me, actually, because it's personal to me. I think even if you're listing something on eBay, you can use AI now. But again, does eBay really know how long I've owned this item for,
Hmm.
etc.? So, but yeah, I think if we move that discussion perhaps to um, our consumers, we need to certainly make them more aware of AI technologies. AI chatbots. I think our recent survey said something like 3 in 5 people are using chatbots. And you just have to be very cautious,
Yeah.
and don't give your full name, full address, personal details. Perhaps you should use pseudonyms for that, or false email accounts where possible. But you certainly know what it is, who it is you're talking to, what's
Yeah.
their privacy policy look like, for example. But it is scary. I think deep fake technology is something that we should be aware of. Voice cloning. Didn't Martin Lewis recently
That's a no.
him? So I think our role building out these toolkits to provide digital confidence is to continuously educate our consumers.
Mm.
And we
Okay.
do that. We do that through vlogs. We do that through our PR articles. We do that through our merchandising online. We're constantly aware of shifts in behaviour. Certainly when it comes to cybersecurity.
Mm. Really good point. So but I just want to move it forward a little bit, and I just want to. I'm a little bit curious as to when you were brought into Nord. What did he sort of say to you in the sense of like, okay, our brand or our presence in the market is currently at A, and we're trying to get to point B in X amount of years. Like, is that what was said, and how's it sort of going? And obviously, you've been there for, is it 2, 3 years now? And how close to the destination, or is the destination constantly moving? What like obviously, do you always have to keep up with the Joneses? You know what I mean? So, talk to me about your journey at this moment and how it's going.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, without I don't want to give too much away, of course, but the UK market is a mature one.
Mm,
NordVPN's been on a juggernaut of a ride to
mm,
get to this point, and I think the metric is always growth, and whether that is going back to my point about shifting our target to mainstream. um, there are always ways to continue to grow, whether that's finding strong relationships with partners that have scale. And I think
mm.
again, back to my point where B2B2C marketing is becoming much more distinct and consumer led. We partner with big brands,
Yep.
because we want to leverage their scale. And so we have a fairly free rein in our roles, really. It's we certainly don't work for an autocratic organization. We are given the freedom to be creative and find ways to grow. And I think that's really what we're looking for. It's a percentage of growth per annum, and
Yep.
and and we work hard as country managers to act as support and collaborate with our broader teams.
Yep.
and I think that's what makes it enjoyable, really. It's because when you go out, seek out a brand that you think you should work with for whatever reason, and it comes to fruition, it's a rewarding
Yeah.
process.
Absolutely. And is there ever any sort of cultural nuances that you have to take into account as well, given your role, or emotional intelligence? Because, like you say, the headquarters is in Lithuania, am I right in thinking, for Nord? So, obviously, with you being the UK country manager, is there anything that you have to be aware of? That, like, look, this is the like you say, the HQ is Lithuania, this is the UK. We do things ever so slightly different. Do you have to take these things into account, or is it only is it fine hairs of these marginal differences?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, we have great teams, and our PR team do a great job of keeping us up to date with what we should know, and our brand team likewise. We have a lot of education, from the wider teams that help us understand what our audacious goal is, and I think we have a simple mantra really, is just to work hard,
Yeah.
and um, but balance. We don't work ourselves into the ground to burnout level. We have to make sure that we have a good work-life balance, and I think that's how you produce good results. You have to understand that you have a separate life, you have family, that's fact,
Yeah.
that they need you, but so does your workplace.
Hmm.
But cultural nuances, we are very diverse. Working for a global company, it's great fun. We have get-togethers. You're sitting around a table, and there's people from, Japan, Korea, Mexico, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, all around the table, but we share the same goal, and that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, I think just to echo that point is, like you say, it's whilst some organisations or some people might see it as like, like I've got to balance all these different sort of viewpoints. At the same viewpoint, you can flip it and you're like, well, all teams, not just security agnostic, all teams need to have different views in order to grow, don't they? Like, you can't just have a team of yes men. Otherwise, you'll just eventually get to a stagnant point where there's no development anymore. You need people to challenge the ethos, so that you can grow, don't we? So, yeah, completely understand that viewpoint. And I just wanted to see, like has the because it's more so for the audience of people that could be watching, is there anything in your background pre-Nord? Because obviously you, am I right in thinking that you had no security knowledge sort of before Nord? You knew all security, but like, look, it's a new world. I just want to know, what did you learn from your previous life that you've brought in? You're like, look, this is really good for this sector, and cybersecurity could learn from this, and this is how we can grow because ecom do it really well in terms of this, or retail or luxury, like you say. What's some key skills that you brought over that's benefited, do you think, cyber?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Nick. And I think what I've always found in my career is that you know whatever the category, you can apply pretty
Yep.
much the same approach, and that hasn't really changed here. What makes it slightly different, the dynamic, in terms of SaaS versus ecom, is that obviously you're not shipping a physical product, so it takes away a lot of the sort of logistical pain points that e-commerce businesses face.
Yep.
Returns, shipping things, speed, all of that stuff. It's a SaaS subscription model. We want lifetime value, we want average order value metrics, and conversion metrics and things like that. But I think, back to your point, one thing I think I've always done in any role is be confident to approach people, and lots of things can happen by using that approach. And I think an example of that, we work with one of the big telco networks in the UK, and that relationship was forged simply through a bit of persistence on LinkedIn and building a relationship. And,
Yep.
and I have that relationship with them today and their partners. So I think, of all of the skills you sort of pick up on your journey, involved with digital marketing and consumer acquisition, certainly for a mature brand that requires, like I said, that distinctive affiliate approach, you need that. You need to
Yep.
be able to reach people and talk to people, because a lot of the companies you approach are in your position. You
Yep.
have a lot of synergy from the get-go, because they want to grow, you want to grow, you have a solution for them, they have one for you. It makes sense to partner.
Yep.
I always like to finish the podcasts with these, and it very much is sort of a little bit of an advice to a younger self. So if you had a time machine and you could go back and speak to a young Bob who's starting out in his career, a bit wide-eyed, a little bit, okay, what am I doing? What advice would you give to him in the sense of like, any worries or any concerns, or even any advice that you give him just to kind of say like, look, it's going to be all right if you just do X, Y, and Z. What's your thoughts on that, Bob?
Gosh, yeah. I've been around a bit, so there's quite a lot of experience in there. But I think, one of the things I think you learn on your journey throughout business and being employed by different sized organizations is the importance of people. So, making sure you get the right person, the right person doing the right things, right bums on seats. And then I think, perhaps to add to that, giving them a framework with autonomy, so they understand, what they've got to do on a day to day, but with a bit of freedom. And I think that's kind of what I'm seeing at Nord, really. It's a fairly autonomous business, and you're allowed the freedom to get on and produce results. And I think that's a really positive thing. But I think the other thing to add to that is the importance of process in business. You don't start out with a handbook, and if you haven't got the right processes in place, which is also, of course, linked to systems and tech stack and things like that, then things can go wrong. So that's super important. I once worked with an entrepreneur who was a master at negotiation, and I think, literally would keep people locked in a room till he got what he wanted. Now, I don't obviously go to that extreme, but that's something I think it's good advice to anyone. Negotiation is something that's perhaps sometimes overlooked, but it's part of your everyday, and you need to learn how to negotiate in different situations with different character types and things like that. So, and then I think finally on that one, if you're running business or a business unit, particularly in the consumer space, where you might be faced with narrow margins and tough economic challenges, cash is king. Look after the cash. I think it's maybe a slightly different dynamic in SaaS, but where turnover perhaps isn't such vanity, it's more sanity. But in B2C e-commerce, for example, profit's king, and so looking after the cash is super important.
Perfect. Some really, really good advice there, and some really good pointers for not just a younger Bob, but anybody who's listening who might take some value from that. So yeah, Bob, thanks again for coming on to the Screwtape podcast. If anybody has any questions for Bob, I'll be sure to put his information down below. But once again, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks, Nick. Cheers.